Hey, don't do it! Hello my friends, it's no secret that Nintendo likes to get the absolute most out of their intellectual properties. I mean, it makes sense. Without a doubt, they've got the richest legacy out of any video game publisher, and it's in their best interest to reuse certain ideas and themes and, of course, characters many times over the years. When you're talking about villains specifically, this also makes sense. There are some hero-villain relationships that simply can't be forgotten. Bowser will always be Mario's arch-nemesis. DK's gotten Mario's goat a handful of times, and the Plumbers faced a few other foes, particularly in his RPG adventures, but at the end of the day, Bowser is the big baddie. He's the guy that will never stop harassing Mario and kidnapping Princess Peach, and I'm fine with that. But there are a few other villains in the Nintendo universe that I feel have had enough time in the spotlight. Ones that are great in their own right, don't get me wrong, but maybe it's time they moved aside for some fresh talent. Just so you know up front, most of these picks are gonna make a lot of you mad. This video will probably make you mad. Statistically, you will probably get mad. But hey, that's what being a YouTuber is all about. Let's make some people mad! First up, let's talk Andross. He was Fox McCloud's first big-time enemy, and while a couple of the Star Fox games have featured other villains, Andross has without a doubt been positioned as Fox's arch-nemesis. He was the villain in the first Star Fox game, and in the N64 reimagining, and in the Wii U reimagining. Every time Nintendo retells the Star Fox story, as I'm sure they'll do again in another 5 years or so, they put Andross at the forefront. And it's certainly fitting. He's the reason the whole Lilat Wars started in the first place. He killed Fox's father, which naturally made things pretty personal. So far, he has been the premier villain of the Star Fox universe. So, why do I think it's time for him to retire? Well, as with many of the series represented in this list, Star Fox was built on a more complex story than most Nintendo games. Bowser always being Mario's nemesis that he fights over and over again, it works because that kind of relationship is what the entire series is based on. Furthermore, because of the overall more cartoony and lighthearted nature of the Mario series, Bowser simply can't die. They're just not gonna kill the guy. We all love him too much. That would be ridiculous. So he'll always find a new way to come and mess up Princess Peach's parties. But the Star Fox universe is a little more realistic, a little more complex, and certainly a good deal darker. Andross may be a supervillain, but he's also mortal, and we've seen him straight up die now multiple times. Even if they could fudge things once or twice more with convenient cloning stories or something, there's no real canonical reason why he should keep coming back again and again. And thematically, as a character, he's been thoroughly explored. I mean, if a prequel game wanted to dig into his early days and his banishment and subsequent descent into madness, that'd be pretty cool. But as he is now, a giant floating monkey head and hands, it really feels like he's reached the end of his arc, we'll say. Where do you go after being a psychotic, floating, disembodied head bent on universal conquest? Even if there is more that can be done with the character, 3 different introductions has already made it feel like he's old news. This is absolutely something I'll be exploring in a future video, but Star Fox has so much potential for awesome stories. There are so many different animals they could use, and plenty of ways for those animals to become spacefaring villains. The monkey scientist that killed Fox's father, old news. Give someone else a turn. Andross should buy a tweed cap, grab a good book, pour a drink, and relax on the back porch of his lakeside cabin. He's earned it. Now, I know there are some pretty hardcore Koopaling fans out there, but in my defense, I will say... Okay, I have no real defense. I just think they should retire. Here's the thing about the Koopalings, though. They're not bad at all, and I really do like the idea of utilizing consistent characters in the Mario universe. I always feel like it needs more characters in the first place, so whenever one is introduced only to never return, it's pretty disappointing. These guys fit really well into the universe, and hey, if Bowser and Bowser Jr. are always coming back to cause more trouble again and again, why wouldn't some of Bowser's underlings? My big problem with the Koopalings is that every time you boot up a new Mario game, regardless of what kind of Mario game it is, when you get to that first castle and Larry jumps into the room, you automatically know every single boss in the game. You know who you're going to be fighting at the end of basically every world. There are just too many of them, and they take up too many slots. If you have one, you gotta have them all. Put Koopalings in Mario Kart, suddenly half the stinking characters are Koopalings. I will say, this wouldn't be nearly as big a deal if they were allowed to have a little more personality more often. They were the main bosses in Paper Mario Color Splash, and in that game, they actually all had different personalities, with different dialogue and gags and everything. And while having all the bosses be Koopalings instead of, you know, giant giant fantastical creatures and original characters like in the other Paper Mario games initially felt like a bit of a slap in the face, ultimately this helped to brighten what was otherwise a dark situation. They added a ton of charm to the game, and for the first time in the history of Mario, they were turned into full-on characters. If these characters had more chances like this to shine, I might feel differently. But as it is, they just disappoint me whenever they pop up. I mean, maybe they could just take a break and pop up again in the distant future, but even then, I'd still just be like, oh, great, Koopalings again. So, if you ask me, they should just give Bowser their 2 weeks notice, go to the little party the other baddies throw for them, and sign up for Tuesday, Thursday bingo at the community center. Oh, here's a big one, and a villain that I actually am a very big fan of. Ridley is fairly similar to Andross in that he comes from a sci-fi series, he commands a great army, and he killed the protagonist's parents. Again, that last thing makes his rivalry with Samus a lot more personal. I mean, no enemy can ever have as deep a history with Samus as that. Even if an enemy is bigger or stronger than Ridley, he will always be the first and the most evil on a personal level. That's why he's certainly the best villain in the Metroid universe. Mother Brain is a bit of a vague, monstery type with very little in the way of personification. I mean, she's a giant brain. Then you got Kraid, but he's never really had a big part in the overall story or anything. And also, he's super gross. So gross. What even are those things? Dark Samus was terrific, but had a concrete arc with a concrete ending, and was the sort of villain you pretty much have to eliminate entirely if there's, like, any hope for the galaxy at all. No, Ridley is the absolute best there has been. And if you want to know how much I love him, I was closer to buying that super giant, massive first four figure than I would like to admit. I mean, I was reaching for the wallet and everything, man. So then, why the heck do I think he should retire? Just like with Star Fox, Metroid was built on a more complex story. Ridley is also mortal, which makes sense, and Samus has, on multiple occasions now, killed him up what good. He's survived many fights and been revived and roboticized and cloned more times than anyone can count. He just keeps coming back. And you know what? I will say that itself lends a lot to the intimidating nature of the character. As a life form, he's just so strong and adaptable and recoverable, and that makes him a particularly nasty villain to fight. Lots of people have criticized Other M for making Samus have a panic attack when she encounters Ridley, despite the fact that she had obviously encountered him many times by that point. But one headcanon theory is that that's exactly why she freaks out. She thinks she's killed him once and for all, yet against all odds, he comes back again, like some paranormal entity. I'd probably be pretty freaked out too. The problem is that the whole resurrection angle can only be used so many times before it becomes a little silly. I feel they've brought back the guy as many times as is reasonable, with the X-Parasite imitation of him in Metroid Fusion being a perfect final iteration. It's another one of those things where even if the character is great, we've got to just appreciate the time we had with him and move on to something else. The Metroid universe needs a fresh injection of creativity, which, oh, what do you know, I've also got a video planned on that topic. There are just so many other potential wacky, gross aliens that could come and ruin Samus's day. If they want to bring back Ridley one final time and present Samus with a way to fully and truly kill him once and for all, like throwing him into a star or something, and like that was the main focal point of the story, then I'd be cool with that. But beyond that, I say Ridley should settle down with his wife in their condo in Malibu, get a little dog, and finally start writing that book. This one's less of a specific villain and more of a type of villain. It hasn't been as much of a thing in recent years, but there was once a time when Nintendo could not give us enough dark versions of characters. The titular monster from Metroid Prime steals some of Samus's mojo and takes on her shape. Super Mario Sunshine starts with Mario landing in jail because a weird goopy doppelganger is making a big gross mess all over the place, and a good number of his games have even featured Cosmic Marios. Kirby goes up against a shadowy alternate in Kirby and the Amazing Mirror. Pit goes up against a shadowy alternate in Kid Icarus Uprising. And of course, Dark Links and Shadow Links and whatnot have plagued regular Links for decades. Back in the dark character heyday of the early to mid 2000s, I was a little surprised that Pikmin 2 wasn't about stopping Dark Olimar from going around and stealing all the Pikmin for some nefarious plot. Admittedly, it's not a terrible idea for a villain. I mean, once you've fought so many other bad guys, fighting yourself is a very interesting twist. It's another element that can make a fight seem more personal. But once it's done too many times and becomes a little too predictable, it starts to lose its impact. We haven't had as many examples of the trope in recent years, and there are plenty other Nintendo characters who have yet to fight their dark selves. But it's still reached that saturation point where if we got another one, it would probably feel a little lame. The only use of the trope I could see continuing is Dark Link, simply because in most cases he doesn't really fit into the main story, and recurring themes and tropes are a big part of the Zelda series. For the most part, though, I think Nintendo could get away with retiring the concept and not giving us dark versions of their remaining characters. Dark Pokemon, for instance. Wait, that's what Gale of Darkness was about, wasn't it? Yeah, that was all about dark Pokemon. Dark versions of DK, or Star Fox, or Captain Falcon, they're all dark. They're all dark! Every single one is dark! Oh, jeez. Anyway, if you ask me, all these guys should give up the identity crisis-inducing villainy, dig the music equipment out of their garages, and spend Saturdays playing soft rock covers at retirement homes. The final Nintendo villain I think should retire will probably be the most controversial. That's right, I think Ganon, the super ultimate king of all evil, should turn in his double swords and his pig nose. I know what many of you are thinking. You cannot do away with Ganon/Ganondorf. He's just as integral to the Zelda universe as Bowser is to Mario's. He's Link's arch nemesis and always will be. I'm not gonna get too deep into the whole canonical discussion here, but basically, spoilers for Skyward Sword, Ganon is an incarnation of Demise, the true evil of the world that has doomed everyone to live in a cycle of conflict for all eternity. Demise and Ganon share many physical similarities, so one could argue that Ganon is the one true reincarnation. But I'm of the opinion that this doesn't necessarily have to be true. I think Ganon could be just one of Demise's incarnations. The series has had a handful of non-Ganon villains, namely Malladus, Majora, and Vaati, and while it's all very debatable, I think one or more of them could be other incarnations, especially Malladus. I like the idea that Demise might one day reappear as someone totally different. I like the idea that we could get a brand new villain in a future Zelda with its own unique style and personality. Or maybe they could bring back Vaati, but in a 3D Zelda. There's just so much potential, and if I'm honest, the whole Ganon thing is getting a little bit stale. Just a little. Once more, as is the case with both Star Fox and Metroid, Zelda is a little heavier on the story side. The more one villain is used, the older it gets. It does indeed make more sense for Ganon to come back again and again versus Ridley or Andross. He's got the Triforce of Power and he's nigh invulnerable. But we've seen that that power can fail him. We've seen that he can die. And I just feel like we've seen so many different versions of him in so many different timelines that we've explored every facet of his character. We've seen him young and savage. We've seen him older and more introspective. We've seen him in a crazy enraged spirit form. And this is definitely something I'm going to talk about more later. But now with the Breath of the Wild sequel, it looks like we're going to see yet another side of him. In my opinion, that should be the end of his story. After that, the Triforce of Power should ditch him and find another master. Demise should take a different form, or possess a different mind, or whatever it is he does. And hey, the Zelda multiverse is infinite. There are infinite timelines, and it all repeats itself infinitely because of Demise's curse. The great thing about Ganon's retirement is that it technically wouldn't have to be 100% permanent. They could still bring him back in a future game, and then we'd all be like, whoa, no, he's back, and it'd be great fun. But at the very least, though, I think he should stop being the #1 bad guy. I don't want to play yet another Zelda game where you fight a seemingly new enemy, only to find out that, wow, big surprise, Ganon was behind everything the whole time. Change things up, surprise us, stretch those creative muscles. I say it's about time for Ganon to cash in his 401k, buy that trim little sloop he's dreamed about since he was a kid, and spend the rest of his summers sailing the Mediterranean. Be free, sweet Demon King. Be free. So what about you? Are there any other Nintendo villains that you would like to see call it quits? Well, I just went over most of the recurring ones in all the major franchises, but let me know if you think of any more, or if you think my picks are really dumb. Thank you for watching, and I hope you have a bad day. Okay, I'm really sorry. I should never joke about someone having a bad day. That was much too far. You have the best day of your life!